Rajat's actually going to walk us through what most people would do here. Rajat, maybe kind of give your theory on why we decided to do the inverse of this based on most people's experience within Bitcoin, and how much more it's going to cost them taking that route.
So the way that I see it, I think most people are going to go with the opposite of that the first path that we told you guys. So the first path, you were spending, you were buying less nominally every year, but this way you're buying more nominally each year. So if you think about it, Michael Saylor did this. Michael Saylor bought a certain amount in the first year. Now their purchase, so in the first year, I think they bought 9,000 Bitcoin or 10,000 Bitcoin, something like that, or their first purchase. Now their purchases are like 50,000 Bitcoin. So they bought 55,000 Bitcoin once, I think. But the thing that most people do is as they build conviction, they want to buy more. So what people do is they wait until they know more, until they are comfortable to buy more. That's exactly what I did. I'm sure that's what you guys did as well. But over time, what they do is they buy more and more because they become more confident and they regret not buying it upfront. So in this case, let's say there are people out there who have $1 million, $2 million, $5 million lying around. There are people like that. There are people who have $100,000 lying around. But what they're going to do is they're going to buy small chunks of Bitcoin. They're going to put 1% into their portfolio. Then they're going to convert that into 5%. They're going to convert it into 10%. What they're going to do is they're going to buy random rental properties. They're going to buy random index funds, all this random stuff that they really don't need. They're going to wait to buy Bitcoin and look at what the price to accumulate one Bitcoin here looks like. So it goes from, what was it in the first one, 753K? Second one was 236K. In this one, you're paying $1.3 million for one Bitcoin. You still have the same 100 million Satoshis, but in this case, you're paying 5 times more than somebody who front loaded their purchases. You're paying something like 13, 14, 15 times more than somebody who just purchased all of it upfront.
It's pretty much $1 million difference, right? Like your strategy there was at 8 years, front loading it, 238,000 versus doing the opposite of that, the inverse. How most people do it is they accumulate more as they learn more about it. And by the time they figure out that this is the only asset that matters, it's costing them, 10x more. So that's $1 million difference there just because of that. So it does take a little bit more. I think it's hard for people who have like a lot of wealth in the old system to really buy into that. But I think when you do look at it objectively like this, and this isn't really our opinion on this. This is how Bitcoin is designed with a fixed bottom line. The supply is fixed. And so as more and more people figure this out, that top line, the demand will increase. And over time, as more and more people figure this out, that demand increases, supply doesn't change. It gets harder and harder to obtain these sats. And that's exactly what we're seeing with these objective spreadsheets.
I like to say in a lot of my videos, Bitcoin runs out at every price. And that's exactly what you see here. The amounts of Bitcoin that people want will run out at every single price. At one point, you could buy 1,000 Bitcoin for like $3. Today, it's costing you, how much is 1,000 Bitcoin? $100 million? So $3 versus 100 million, or 85 million or whatever. $3 versus $85 million. That's a massive difference. And most people are going to keep putting it off until they're completely priced out of certain denominations. So let's say right now, maybe people who are listening to this can easily get to 0.1. At some point, they won't be able to get to 0.01. And at some point, they won't be able to get to 0.001. It's just going to get more and more expensive. I think at some point, 0.001 Bitcoin is going to cost you $100,000. So if you can get to 1 Bitcoin ASAP, do it.
Yeah. This is showing time. This is showing that the sooner you begin to understand Bitcoin, the sooner you build conviction, because you do have to have conviction to believe in this asset. You're probably not going to be used to the volatility of it if you're coming from money. You're probably used to a lot more stable short-term volatility assets, and you're going to have to just build some conviction around this asset. So begin to learn about it, start buying. Over years and years, you will not regret your choices.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that the one thing, we'll kind of wrap up here. We'll get our final thoughts. I think that the last thing that I would say on this is just understand that we go back to the supply and demand of this thing. I think it's important to really understand that as we see more individuals adopting this, as we see more countries adopting this, it is just going to get harder, because you have to understand that that supply, that bottom line, let's just go with 21 million, even though there's 19.8 million available right now. Let's just use 21 million for simplicity. As that number at the top grows, as more and more people figure this out, though, there's going to be more people fighting for that amount of Bitcoin. And as that number continues to grow, as that number of people fighting for that same amount of Bitcoin, it's just going to get harder and harder to get. So more of the story here is take what you have, turn it into Bitcoin. Even if you don't have a bunch in your savings, start converting some assets. What do you guys think about that in terms of like how somebody could actually go about doing this?
Depends what they have.
Sell your assets ASAP. That's all. That's what I would say. Yeah, it depends.
Sell your assets. If you have your assets locked into your home, you could do a HELOC, so extending your mortgage out and taking some of that equity back in the form of cash, swapping that into Bitcoin. You could use it as a savings account. Anything extra that you earn can go into Bitcoin. That's what I do. And because I've already sold all my assets, I've done that parts. That's step one. Step two is anything extra that you earn. So provide value to the world, and whatever else you get back, you can swap into Bitcoin.